First story. I threw away my autistic son's comfort toys, punished him, and told him he was annoying, and that his teachers hate him after he got bullied at school, to make him a normal teenager. Now I have lost my family, and I'm regretting everything. I 42M have a 12-year-old son who was diagnosed with Asperger's when he was 6. Academically, he's always been bright, reads well above grade level, crushes maths tests, and remembers facts most adults would forget. But socially, that's always been a problem. He's not mean, not aggressive, but off. He fixates on things like he's stuck in a feedback loop. When he was 8, he spent an entire year obsessed with vacuum cleaner models, no joke. He'd sit at the dinner table talking about Dyson versus Shark for an hour straight. If you tried to change the topic, he'd just wait until there was a pause and go right back to it. Back then, he was in a special education school. Smaller class sizes, dedicated staff, more tolerance for quirky behavior. It worked, more or less. He didn't really have friends, but he wasn't miserable either. But when middle school came around, my wife 39F pushed hard for him to attend a mainstream private school. Her thinking was that he shouldn't be sheltered forever and needed to learn how to function in the real world. I agreed, but with hesitation. I knew how brutal kids could be. She swore things would be different now that they're older. More mature, less bullying. She was wrong. From the first month in this new school, it's been one issue after another. My son would come home talking about how he ate lunch alone, how no one talked to him, and how they'd roll their eyes or move away when he sat near them. I'd ask if anything happened, and he'd say no, not really, just that they don't like him. He couldn't explain why. My wife, predictably, would say it's because they don't understand his specialness. She means well, but she's been coddling him for years. Everything that goes wrong, she blames on the other kids or the school, never our son. But the reality is, I've seen how he acts. He talks at people, not with them. If he thinks something is funny, he'll repeat it 15 times, even if no one else is laughing. He smiles like he's trying to be a cartoon character. And right now, he's into Peppa Pig. Yes, the preschool cartoon. That's what he watches every day after school. He talks about it to his peers. He's made PowerPoint presentations about Paw Patrol characters. He literally once told my cousin at a family BBQ that he prefers the 2015 run of the Emoji Movie to most grown-up movies because it's visually more stimulating. A few weeks ago, things escalated. My son came home from school crying. Some kids yelled at him in the locker room. Called him names I'm not repeating here. Said he was creeping everyone out. My wife was furious. She called the school, demanded meetings, and wrote angry emails. We attended one of those meetings with the vice principal and a few teachers, and what we heard wasn't exactly shocking, at least not to me. One teacher, his history teacher, said he's doing well in class academically, has an A, actually. But he's persistently disruptive to peers. Not in a malicious way, but in a way that makes it hard for others to concentrate. She said he'll just randomly start talking about irrelevant stuff like cartoons from 10 years ago, or ask classmates whether they think George Washington would have liked Minions. Another teacher said he'll make exaggerated smiling faces at random people in the hallway, and then not understand why that makes them uncomfortable. They all tried to be diplomatic. I get it, they're not trying to crush a kid's spirit. But the message was clear. He's not blending in. He's standing out in a way that makes middle school kids uncomfortable. And anyone who remembers being 12 knows exactly how cruel that age can be. Still, I was frustrated. I asked what the school was doing to stop the bullying, and they gave us the usual corporate nothing speak. We're aware of the issue and taking steps. But nothing changed. And the thing is, I don't think they can fix it. Because it's not just about a few bad apples. The issue is that my son is behaving in ways that, to the average 7th grader, are weird as hell. My wife won't hear any of this. Every time I try to talk about our son needing to maybe work on fitting in, she shuts it down with, he shouldn't have to change who he is. And I get that, to a degree. But we also don't live in a utopia. The world doesn't cater to people who obsess over Peppa Pig at age 12. At some point, he's going to have to learn to adapt, because the world won't adapt to him. Things boiled over a few nights ago. My son came home visibly upset. Wouldn't eat dinner. Later, I found him crying in the living room with my wife sitting beside him. I asked what happened, and he said, between sobs, "Why do they hate me?" My wife hugged him and said, "They don't hate you, sweetie. They just don't understand you." And then he asked again, "But why do they say those things to me? What did I do?" I don't know what came over me, frustration, exhaustion, maybe guilt. But I snapped. I told him, flat out, "Because you're annoying." The room went dead silent. My wife's mouth dropped open. My son looked stunned, like I'd slapped him. I continued, not yelling, not being cruel, just blunt. I told him, "Your teacher said it in your report. You constantly talk about stuff that no one else cares about. You make faces at people. And you cover your ears and run out of rooms when the bell rings. Kids don't know how to deal with that. So they mock what they don't understand." My son started crying harder. My wife jumped up, told me I was being cruel, and told him to go to his room. He ran off, and she laid into me, called me a monster, said I'd traumatized him. We yelled back and forth for 30 minutes. I ended up sleeping on the couch. The next morning, I tried to talk to my wife again, but she wasn't having it. She said I should apologize. I asked, "Apologize for what?" "Telling him the truth." She said there's a difference between being honest and being hurtful. I disagree. What's hurtful is letting him live in a bubble where he doesn't understand why kids don't want to be around him. We've spent years softening the truth, hoping therapy would catch him up socially, and it hasn't. He's still behind, and no amount of shielding is going to change that. I'm not blaming him for being autistic. But I'm also not going to lie to him and tell him everything is fine when it clearly isn't. I'm the one who's been warning for years that this would happen if we threw him into a mainstream setting without preparing him for the social expectations. My wife insisted it would be better. Now here we are, and somehow I'm the bad guy for pointing out what the adults already know but won't say out loud. We've tried therapy. He's in a weekly social skills group. I've spent hours trying to role-play appropriate conversations with him, teaching him how to read the room. It doesn't stick. He'll smile and nod during practice, but when he's back at school, it's right back to Peppa Pig and asking kids if they think the moon is fake. The problem isn't effort. He tries. But trying doesn't change how other kids see him. And let me be clear, this isn't just about cartoons. It's everything. He'll walk up to other kids while they're talking and interrupt with random facts. He doesn't understand sarcasm or inside jokes. He once told a group of classmates at lunch that his mom still helps him bathe, sometimes when he gets soap in his eyes. They laughed. He didn't get why. It crushed him, but he still doesn't connect the dots. He thinks they're mean for no reason. At a certain point, someone has to say it plainly. That night, I was the one who did. Not to be cruel, but because he deserves to know why this keeps happening. He's smart. He can handle the truth, even if it hurts. My wife thinks I broke something in him. I think she's scared that I broke the illusion. We've been pretending for years that the world will adjust for him. It won't. It never has. People tolerate quirks, not behaviors that make them uncomfortable. And as much as we hate to admit it, middle school kids are brutal and unforgiving. No amount of "they should know better" changes what actually happens. Since that night, things have been tense at home. My son barely talks to me. My wife has doubled down on coddling him extra hugs, letting him skip chores, validating everything he says no matter how off-topic or awkward. I haven't pushed the issue. I needed space too. But I'm still not convinced I did anything wrong. The teachers didn't lie. They spelt it out clearly. He's socially disruptive, and it affects his relationships with peers. That's the nice way of saying he's annoying to be around. If adults are thinking it and putting it in writing, you can be sure 12-year-olds are thinking it 10 times louder. We can't keep acting like this is everyone else's fault. Some people will probably say I should have framed it better. Maybe. But my patience has a limit. Years of walking on eggshells, redirecting conversations, dealing with meltdowns, pretending everything is fine when it's not, that adds up. And it wears you down. Especially when you're the one always being told you're too harsh for seeing reality for what it is. I've always shown up. I do the therapy rides, the school meetings, the meltdowns, and the mornings where he refuses to put on socks because they feel wrong. I've missed work meetings for emergency calls from the school. I've spent weekends practicing eye contact drills and small talk. But none of that matters when I finally say the one thing everyone else tiptoes around. Was it harsh? Yes. But it was also honest. He wanted to know why he was being bullied. I gave him the answer. I didn't say he deserved it. I didn't say it was his fault. I said kids bully him because they find his behavior annoying. That's not judgment. That's reality. I'm tired of pretending that being honest about the situation is some moral failure. My son doesn't need more comforting lies. He needs to understand how others perceive him. Because if he doesn't, this cycle is just going to repeat in high school, in college, and in life. If we really want him to function in the world, he needs to know what the world actually is, not the sugar-coated version his mom keeps feeding him. I don't hate my son. I love him. But loving someone doesn't mean pretending their behavior has no impact. Sometimes love means being the one person willing to say the thing no one else will, even if it makes them cry. Because that pain might actually push change where comfort never has. So yeah, maybe it wasn't my best parenting moment. Maybe I should have softened it. But I said what I believe he needed to hear, and I don't regret it. Ada? Comments. Comment 1. I read this, and I felt a pit in my stomach. You sound like my dad when I was that age. He couldn't stand that I was weird, and not like the other boys. Not sporty. Not loud. Obsessed over old cartoons and science fiction books. He never hit me, but he made it very clear that I was embarrassing. Every time he said I needed to toughen up or act normal, it chipped away at me until I stopped talking to him altogether. We haven't spoken in 8 years. Your post isn't about helping your son. It's a rant about how hard it is for you to deal with him. It's about your resentment that therapy isn't a quick fix, and that he still acts like a weird kid. You wanted a normal son. You didn't get one. So now you're projecting that disappointment onto him under the guise of truth. Want to know why he talks about Peppa Pig? Because it's simple. It's predictable. It doesn't reject him. Unlike his peers. And now, unlike you. So yeah, YTA. And if you don't course correct, get ready to be cut off when he's old enough to choose who he lets in his life. Comment 2. I teach 7th grade. I've had kids like your son in my classes. I've also had parents like you, and I'll be blunt. They're the hardest to work with. You think you're being honest with your son, but what you're doing is punishing him for being disabled. You can't logic his brain into neurotypical behavior. The obsession with Peppa Pig? That's a sensory comfort. The facial expressions, likely stemming or masking anxiety. Covering his ears at loud bells. That's literally a sensory overload issue tied to autism. You treat those behaviors like character flaws. They're not. When we say a student is persistently disruptive to peers, we don't mean your kid is an arsehole. It's a coded phrase because we're forced to tiptoe around liability and parent blowback. The real message is, he's not thriving here. He needs more support than we can give. And the right move would be to listen to that, not weaponize it against your child mid-breakdown. You're not the worst parent I've ever seen. But if you don't shift your mindset fast, you'll do lasting damage not just to your relationship with your son, but to his ability to self-advocate later. Right now, he probably thinks he is the problem. That kind of shame sticks. Update. It's been a couple of weeks since I posted. And yeah, I read the comments. The majority called me the arsehole. Some were brutal. A few tried to understand where I was coming from. I don't regret posting it, but it did hit me harder than I expected to hear just how many people thought I crossed a line. After the fight with my wife and that whole blow-up, things didn't just go back to normal. My son avoided me for days. No eye contact. No conversation. When I'd ask him basic stuff like if he ate lunch or how school was, I'd get one-word answers or just silence. My wife basically stopped speaking to me, except when necessary. I thought maybe it would settle after a week, but it didn't. Then something happened at school. I got a call from the nurse saying our son had been pushed during PE. Apparently, the same kids who've been verbally bullying him for months decided to shove him when he didn't get the joke, and kept trying to talk to them. He fell and hit his shoulder. No major injury, but enough for a report. That was the tipping point. We had an emergency meeting at the school. This time, they couldn't just shrug it off. I brought up the previous complaints, emails, and meetings, all the times we warned them this was escalating. They finally admitted they'd dropped the ball. The principal said they were moving forward with an IEP evaluation, and until then, they'd provide a staff member during high-risk times like recess and locker room transitions. My wife was furious, but not just at the school. Still furious at me. After the meeting, she told me I'd contributed to his anxiety and isolation by making him feel like a burden. I tried explaining that I never hated our son, never wanted to hurt him, I just snapped. That wasn't enough for her. She said he needed emotional safety, not brutal honesty dressed up as parenting. A few days later, she handed me something. It was a composition notebook our son had been writing in. He didn't show it to us. She found it while doing laundry. Normally, I wouldn't read his private stuff, but she insisted I needed to see it. There were entries, short ones, some written in all caps, some in broken sentences. One read, "Why am I always wrong?" Another, "They laugh when I talk. I don't know how to stop." One that hit me in the chest. "Dad thinks I'm annoying. I think so too. I try to stop, but my head talks too much." That was it for me. I didn't cry, but something cracked. I'd told myself I was just being real with him, that if I didn't say it, someone else would. But reading that, he wasn't processing what I said like some coaching moment. He was internalizing it like a truth he'd always feared. I didn't give him tools, I gave him shame. Around that same time, I ran into an old coworker at a hardware store. We hadn't spoken in years. He asked how my son was doing. I'd forgotten. I'd mentioned the diagnosis in passing once. We got talking, and he told me his adult son was also on the spectrum. Late diagnosis. Rough adolescence. But now working full-time, engaged, doing okay. He told me. My son didn't need to be fixed. He needed to understand himself first. That takes time. And patience. And yeah, sometimes it feels like a one-sided relationship. But every breakthrough was worth it. That conversation lingered in my head for days. Then, a few nights later, my son had another sensory episode. The fire alarm went off during a drill, and he completely shut down. Cried in class. Covered his ears. The teacher called me. Said he curled up in the nurse's office for an hour and wouldn't talk. I came to get him. He barely looked at me. On the ride home, I asked if he wanted to stop for ice cream. He shook his head. Just stared out the window. Not angry. Just defeated. That silence was worse than any screaming match. I realized I wasn't even sure if he felt safe around me anymore. That hit me harder than anything Reddit could say. After that, I agreed to start therapy. My wife had been asking for months. I always resisted. Told her I didn't have time or didn't believe in that, talking about feelings crap. But I booked a family therapist. We've had 2 sessions so far. I went in thinking I'd get tools to fix our communication. Instead, I got hit with questions I couldn't answer. Why was I so angry at his behavior? Why did I feel the need to correct everything that made him different? Why did I think he should mask to fit in instead of helping him find people who accepted him as he is? The truth. I thought puberty would iron it out. I thought he'd start liking more age-appropriate stuff, grow out of the cartoon obsessions, and maybe blend in more. That was my plan. Wait it out. Hope for the best. That was never a plan. It was denial. There's been no breakthrough since. My son still barely talks to me. My wife is still angry, and I can't blame her. I'm trying, but it doesn't feel like enough. I don't expect my son to suddenly trust me again because I showed up at therapy twice. I'm still confused. I still don't know what I'm doing half the time. But I'm trying to figure it out now instead of just reacting with frustration. That's new for me. I know now that none of this came from hate. But good intentions don't erase bad impact. I said something I can't take back, and he's still carrying it. There's no clean resolution to this update. No big realization or redemption arc. I'm just here, sitting with the mess I made, trying to do less damage going forward. I'm still not sure how. But I'm listening now. Comments. Comment 1. I'm going to focus on something others aren't. Your wife. She's clearly been running on fumes too. Except where you lent into frustration, she lent into protection. And now you've both ended up on opposite ends of the same emotional battlefield, with your kid in the middle taking all the shrapnel. You said she's still angry, and yeah, I get it. She warned you. And now she's watching her son emotionally withdraw and spiral. But if therapy continues, you both need to go. This isn't just about repairing your relationship with your son. It's about fixing the co-parenting rift. Because right now, your wife probably doesn't trust you not to emotionally damage your son again. And you probably resent that she makes you feel like you're walking on eggshells. You two have to get aligned. Because otherwise, this kid is going to keep getting 2 different messages. One says, "You're fine, don't change," and the other says, "You have to mask to be loved." That's a mental health disaster in the making. Fix your marriage. For him. For her. For you. Comment 2. I've got a son with ADHD and some sensory stuff, not autism, but close enough that I feel this deep in my chest. I've had those "I'm at my effing limit" moments too. The socks thing, the school meetings, the obsessions that don't stop. Yeah, been there. I also told my kid once that he was exhausting. I thought I was just being honest. He didn't talk to me for 3 days. My wife looked at me like I kicked a puppy. I felt like the biggest arsehole on earth. So when you said your son wouldn't look at you, wouldn't talk, and just shut down, I got that. But here's the difference. You didn't just move on like nothing happened. You signed up for therapy. You're showing up. Most dads I know would have bailed emotionally a long time ago. One suggestion. Don't wait for your kid to go back to normal with you. This isn't about earning his forgiveness. It's about changing how you show up, so he feels safe enough to let you in again if he ever does. Keep at it. Comment 3. I'm not going to pat you on the back yet. I had a dad who meant well, but constantly made me feel like I was hard to love. Everything I did was too much or wrong or embarrassing. He didn't scream or hit. He just looked disappointed all the time. That SHT sticks. When I was 13, he died. And guess what I remember? Not one single hug. Not one, I'm proud of you. Just silence, side eyes, and lectures. So when I read about your kid staring out the window after the alarm, yeah, I see myself. That dead stare. That's him disconnecting. You've got a shot to fix this. I'm not saying redemption arc or therapy saves all. Cue happy music. But you can choose not to be the dad he remembers with dread. Be boring. Be stable. Be present. That's what matters now. Because if he ever stops needing you completely, it won't be because he's grown up. It'll be because he gave up. Don't let that happen. Update. It's been another couple of weeks. I thought I was making progress, and instead I think I've gone the opposite direction. When I said last time that I didn't know what I was doing, I didn't realize how literal that was. I genuinely thought I could fix this if I just worked harder. The bullying at school hasn't stopped. The school suspended 2 boys for 3 days after the pushing incident. But that's all they did. They didn't address the culture or the ongoing harassment. My son said the same kids came back and just started whispering instead of yelling. They still avoid him. They still mock him. Now they just do it when teachers aren't looking. I started thinking the only way to stop the bullying was to make him less of a target. Not fix him. Not erase his autism. Just teach him what to talk about and how to act so other kids would stop reacting badly. That was the logic in my head. I thought, this is a skill gap, not a personality issue. And skills can be taught, right? So I started something at home I called normal conversation practice. Every evening at dinner, we sit down, and I make him go through scripted social interactions. Things like, what sports do you like? What video games do you play? What music are you into? And every time he tries to circle back to Peppa Pig or Paw Patrol, or tries to explain some cartoon plot, I stop him. I sigh. I say, this is what I mean. This is why kids don't connect with you. You have to stay on topic. My wife said I sounded like a drill sergeant. I told her we didn't have time to be soft anymore. I said if we don't fix this now, high school will destroy him. I realize how that sounds reading it back. But at the time, I thought I was helping. Then I made the decision that has probably done the most damage yet. I threw away all his Peppa Pig stuff. I told him he needed to watch age-appropriate content. I put on some superhero movies and a Call of Duty gameplay video, because that's what I saw other boys his age watching. He shut down immediately. Not angry. Not defiant. Just frozen. Eyes wide. Silent. Then the meltdown hit hard, rocking, crying, hands over ears, gasping. I thought he was doing it to avoid growing up, so I kept insisting he sit and push through it. My wife got in my face, screaming that I was torturing him. I yelled back that I was trying to prepare him for life. She told me I don't understand autism at all. I told her she was raising him to be eaten alive by the world. She said I needed therapy again. I said therapy was just making me soft and guilty, and that guilt wasn't helping him. We didn't talk the rest of the night. The next day I went into a parenting Facebook group and posted about the normal conversation training. I got destroyed. People are calling me emotionally abusive, controlling, and ignorant. I scrolled past all of that and found one from a guy saying he agreed kids need to learn to adapt socially. And I held on to that comment like it was proof I was right and everyone else was dramatic. And that was enough to keep going. Then I decided to try noise tolerance training. My son covers his ears during bells and loud noises. Always has. It's part of his diagnosis. I convinced myself we could train him out of it. I ordered a whistle. I told him we were going to practice staying calm with sound. Then I started blowing the whistle at random times during the day. Not long blasts, but sharp ones. To build resilience. He flinched every time. Sometimes he cried. Sometimes he begged me to stop. He said, "It hurts." I told him, "It only hurts because you aren't used to it yet." My wife almost called her sister to come get him that night. She said she was genuinely thinking about separation paperwork. She said she didn't recognize me anymore. She said I was acting like the world was the enemy and our son was the soldier I was training to survive it. I didn't know how to respond to that. Then I tried forcing social interaction. There are 2 boys in our neighborhood who sometimes play soccer in the cul-de-sac. I invited them over. They clearly didn't want to be there, I could see it, but I ignored it. I made everyone sit in a circle and share something about their day. The boys stared at me like I was insane. My son stared at the floor. One of the boys got uncomfortable and asked to leave. I told him to stay. He left anyway. His mom hasn't looked me in the eye since. That kid has avoided our house entirely. My son didn't say a word the whole night. I told my wife afterwards. They weren't good influences anyway. That was me protecting myself from the reality. I made it worse. Again. And then came the moment that finally cracked something in me. I took him to a middle school football game because I read a quote online that said, "Comfort zones are cages." I thought maybe if he saw other kids just existing, something would click. The noise was too much. The crowd, the yelling, the band. He melted down almost instantly. He dropped to the ground, hands over ears, crying so hard he started dry heaving. And I heard myself saying, "You're fine. Ignore it. You're fine." He wasn't fine. People stared. A few kids laughed. A mom asked if we needed help. I picked him up and carried him to the car. He cried the whole way home. My wife didn't say a word when we walked in. She just held him while he shook. That was last night. Tonight, when I sat down next to him on the couch, he flinched. Not dramatically. Just a slight pull of his shoulders, like his body braced for something. And that was the first time I actually saw what I've become to him. I don't think he sees me as the parent who's trying. I think he sees me as the one who makes him feel wrong. I am not writing this because I suddenly know the right path. I don't. I am still confused. I still have the urge to fix, to push, to drive. I don't know how to stop that instinct. I don't know how to support him without trying to change him. I don't know how to accept that this may just be who he is, and that life may not get easier. But for the first time, I'm scared that I'm not just failing him, I'm actively damaging him. And I don't know what to do next. I don't know where the line is between helping him adapt and teaching him to hate himself. If anyone has something real, not slogans, not pity, not just love him more, I'll take it. Because I can't keep going like this. And he can't either. Comments. Comment 1. You're trying so hard to be a solution that you've forgotten to be a parent. I don't think you hate your kid. I don't even think you want him to be normal out of malice. I think you're scared less that he's going to have a hard life, and you're panicking. So now everything is a battle. The shows, the sound, the friends, the effing whistle. But here's the truth no one tells us parents enough. You can't brute force social development. I've got 3 kids, 2 neurotypical, and 1 with autism and sensory integration issues. We tried the exposure crap. It didn't build tolerance. It built dread. And when he finally did make friends, you know what helped? Letting him talk about the SHT he loved, no matter how weird it seemed. 1 kid connected with him through that. That's how real relationships happen. Not from scripts. From authenticity. Your wife's not mad because you're trying. She's mad because you're breaking your kid to try. Slow the F down. Learn what regulation actually means. Because what are you doing right now? It's not strength. It's control. Comment 2. You're him. You're the dad I had. The one who thought he was toughening me up, when really he was just sanding me down until there was barely anything left that felt real. You think you're teaching your kid how to survive? No. You're teaching him to hate the parts of himself that don't make you comfortable. I covered my ears at sirens too. My dad yelled. I stopped reacting. Know what I did instead? Dug my fingernails into my palms under the table. You didn't cure your kid's sensitivity. You taught him it wasn't safe to express it around you. That's what that flinch on the couch was. The saddest part? I know you don't mean to hurt him. I can tell you think you're doing what's best. But the road to trauma is paved with dads who meant well. If you really want to help him, step the F back. Start learning about his brain, not yours. And get ready for a long walk back from this damage, if he ever lets you. Second story. I own a house with my ex now. My wife demands we sell it or share it with my stepkids in the house. But I and my ex intend to give it to our son. When my ex and I divorced, I moved out, and she lived in our house until she found her own place. I bought the house 3 years before we got married, and her name was added to the deed when we were married. At the time of our divorce, I was 9 years into the 15-year mortgage. When she found her own place, we decided to keep the house in both of our names and rent it out because neither of us wanted to sell it. For the past 6 years, we have rented out the house and basically broken even. She manages the property more than I do, so she kept the meager profits. Now that the house is paid off, We are actually going to start turning actual profit. We agreed to a 60-40 split of the profits, with her keeping 60 because she is the one that deals with the tenants. My wife, whom I married last year, really wants me to sell this house. At first, she wasn't that insistent, but lately she has become so. She said there's no reason for me to co-own a house with my ex-wife. She also says that now that it is paid off, we could do a cash sale and make a lot of money. Neither my ex nor I want to sell, and it's our house, so I don't really see the point of these conversations. Even if I agreed with her, my ex wouldn't agree, and it would be an unnecessary fight. I'd have to get a lawyer. I'm exhausted just thinking about it. Last night my wife asked me if I intended to co-own this house with my ex forever. I told her, truthfully, that we had many times discussed eventually giving it to our son once he reaches the appropriate life stage. She was upset by this answer. She asked if I intended to give a house to my stepkids or any future kids we might have. I told her this is an apples and oranges situation. The house isn't fully mine. No penny has ever gone from our shared household into that house. It's more my ex's than mine at this point, really not legally. Legally it's 50-50ths, but she spends more time on it. Also, this isn't a nice house, not like the one my wife and I bought after our wedding. The house I co-own with my ex is a small 2-bedroom house. It's not like he's going to get a mansion. All the same, she is very upset. She said she feels like the house is a source of strife in our relationship, and she wants it gone. I told her I love her, but the answer is no. She's been cold to me all morning as a result. Ada has no consensus bot. OP had mixed responses, but is heavily leaning towards Entas. Comments. Commenter 1. It's not about the house. OP. Yeah, I know. But all the same, is it reasonable to demand I get rid of something valuable as a sort of weird loyalty ritual? Commenter 2. NTA, she's coming off as greedy and a bit jealous here. Acting like it's weird that you essentially co-own a business investment with your ex, who is also the mother of your son. It's not like you're playing house with her. Add to that the fact she seems more focused on getting the money for herself or kids. How did you get this far into the marriage without your plans for the house coming up? Were you always clear about them, or? OP. It has come up many times, but she has gotten more insistent than she was before. Previously, it was her preference I sell it. Now it's almost a demand. Commenter 3. She sounds very firm in her opinion. Unfortunately, she does not have a say. It is your property, which will benefit your son, and most of all does not impact her. I would ask your wife why all of a sudden she set a boundary here. Furthermore, where is she intending to go with your money? Don't cave or give in. She's rude, immature, and manipulative with her treatment of you. OP. She thinks we could put the money in our retirement plans and the children's college funds. Commenter 3. Is she not able to put an equal amount into her half of the retirement plan? Also, an equal amount into her existing kids, your stepkids' college funds with her ex. Her kids with her ex aren't your burden, unless you signed papers to legally adopt them. OP. I am actually in the process of adopting them. It's just difficult because we don't know where her ex lives, so that complicates everything. Commenter 4. Why do you need to pay for your stepkid's college fund? Why aren't she and the child's father doing that? That should be no issue with you. OP. Bio dad flew the coop. Commenter 5. NTA. I fully understand your current spouse, yet I do not think she grasps the situation fully since she cannot be in your shoes. If you and your ex-wife are on good terms, relatively speaking, consider selling your share to her, if she's open to it, or buy her share to fully own it again. And please, do not add your wife's name to any future properties. Love triumphs over all, but money, like a rotten one, can spoil a fresh basket of fruit. OP. My wife's name is on our current home, as it should be. Regarding my ex buying me out, I don't think that's fair to her. So she should shoulder the financial burden of something for the benefit of our shared child. Commenter 6. You've been married for a year. Who owned your current home when you married? You should consult a financial counselor right now to get a reasonable plan because, as things stand, you could be headed for a bigger financial mess with your second wife. OP. We bought it together right after the wedding. Commenter 6. Did she contribute a significant amount to the down payment? Is she employed now? OP. Yes, a quarter of the down payment came from her. We are in the same earning bracket. She makes almost as much as I do. Since she has 2 kids and a deadbeat ex, she wasn't able to save as much as me before we married. But we both contribute more or less equally to our current shared household. Commenter 7. Do you have a prenup that excludes this property from being claimed as community property by wife too? OP. In my state, property owned before a marriage is not considered community property unless the spouse contributes to the property mortgage payments, repairs, etc. Since my ex has been managing the property, she's been the one paying the mortgage from the rental proceeds and handling repairs and such. So there's no reality where my wife could claim a stake in this property. How old is OP's son? OP. He is almost 12. OP on the college funds for all children involved. OP. Yes, my son has a college fund. We also have set up funds for my stepkids. My stepson is 7, and my stepdaughter is 5. They're very smart children. Does OP's current wife get along with his son? OP. My wife gets along with my son, but she does not like my ex. They almost never interact, so it usually doesn't matter. But yeah, there's real contempt there. She's always known about the house and never liked it. But lately it bothers her more than before. Commenter. Does it matter if she is verbalizing that contempt to your son? Why is she contemptuous? Why doesn't it bother you that your wife feels comfortable denigrating someone you were on such good terms with until she came on the scene? OP. No, she doesn't say anything in front of my son. Basically, my wife thinks my ex-wife gave up on life and is a lazy, unfeminine slob. She mostly wears sweatpants and never puts on makeup. She doesn't push herself to relearn how to do the things she did before her accident. She no longer has professional ambitions. I think those things are none of our business. But my wife is more or less disgusted by my ex. She doesn't usually say anything, and only ever in private, even when she does. OP on the divorce. OP. My ex-wife was in an accident that limited her mobility and killed her libido. Our ex-less marriage made me resentful of her and made her paranoid that I was stepping out on her, which made me even more resentful, because I was both not getting any and dealing with accusations of getting what I wasn't getting. Also, on top of all that, my previously active wife now couldn't do most of the fun activities we used to share. Finally, she said, if we stay married, eventually we'll hate each other. Let's get divorced while we at least still like each other. You'll be free, and all I ask in return is that you look out for me. So that's what we did. I got to move on and marry someone I'm compatible with. And I'll always make sure she and our son are happy and healthy. It was her idea to get divorced because her paranoia about me potentially cheating on her was driving us both crazy. OP's and his current wife's ages. OP. I am 37, and she is 31. Commenter 8. Which is another long-term commitment that would appear to ignore a major pre-existing problem. How does your wife relate to your son? Does she dismiss his concerns as being spoiled because he's had you all to himself for most of his life? How do your stepkids get along with your son? Do you have one time with him where he feels free to be open about how she treats him? Do you not see how this whole situation screams counseling now? OP. They talk a lot. She is always pushing him to think about and engage with the world around him. I think she likes having a kid in the house that can talk about things a little deeper than cartoons. My stepkids love my son. They look up to him and think he's really cool. We don't have a lot of one-on-one time anymore because there are so many of us living together. But we talk when I drive him to extracurriculars. Commenter 9. Your first wife wedged herself into being a shared owner of an asset wholly owned by you and protected in a divorce. Your second wife is trying to do the same. It's up to you when you want to learn this lesson. Now or in 7-10 years. OP. What are you talking about? My ex-wife didn't wedge anything. For our entire marriage, she paid half the mortgage. When we redecorated, she was the one that painted. She was the one that maintained the garden. She was the one that kept the house clean. That counts for nothing. So what? She was just my indentured servant. Some of you have very gross ideas of women. Update. Well, I decided to make some changes to the house situation, but my wife didn't like them. My ex and I are filing a new deed where we each gifted our son a portion of our equity that falls just under the annual gift tax exemption. If we do this every year, by the time our son is 18, the house will be fully or almost fully his. No tax penalty. To say my wife was pissed would be an understatement. I am going to use my share of the rental proceeds, split 4 ways to buff up the college savings for each kid, mine, hers, and the baby we are trying for. My wife is unhappy with all of this. I told her the house is an asset from my previous marriage, and so it goes to the benefit of my son from the marriage. Any assets she had with her ex would be rightfully my stepkids if such assets existed. I basically said we need to get past this, because if we are going to bring a baby into this world, we can't be fighting about such a non-issue. She said she would accept it and move on, but she needed some time to do so. Basically, that's the resolution. Clarification. A lot of you are confused about what the initial understanding concerning the house was. My ex and I invested money in this house. Our understanding was always that the house would be our son's once he became an adult. Not that any income made off of it before that would be his. We always intended to split profits once the house became income generating, which it only recently has. Comments. Commenter 1. No, it isn't. She will keep fighting you. You need to fix your head and think of your son. She will try everything to get your son out of the picture and his money. Is getting laid that important to you? OP. I've mostly been ignoring the really hateful comments because I know that's just how this website is. Here's the thing. You don't know my wife. We had a financial disagreement. That isn't indicative of her feelings towards my son. She thinks holding the house is a waste when the money could go into high-yield savings funds for college for the kids or in our retirement accounts. It's frustrating to her that I disagree with what she thinks is the best course. And since the house isn't hers, her opinion isn't counted. Dealing with frustration is part of life. That doesn't make her a bad person. Commenter 2. What does she give to your children, her stepchildren? Why would you split the profit between your child and hers? Put a stop to it now. She has no say. It's not her house. She did nothing to get even $1 from this house, and her children too. Don't be stupid. OP, all of our income is used for the benefit of the entire household. Rental profit is income. The house itself will be my son's when he turns 18. But until then, my share 40% of the rental proceeds is mine. It goes in the general pool just like everything else. Commenter 3. I would never stay married to someone who insists on owning a house with his ex-wife for years to come. There are so many other ways you could keep that money separate to give to your child when the time comes. OP, it's not about the money. If he wants to sell the house when he inherits it, he can. But the point is to give him something valuable that we have maintained for him for years. It's a symbol of how our love for him has never wavered, even if we don't love each other anymore. Commenter 3. This resolution seems equitable. But do you realize that while you are splitting the rental income, you are taking away from your current kid and the kid-to-be? I get you need to keep the peace, and this may be how you achieve that. However, your stepkids have another parent and a set of grandparents that your kids don't have that could be contributing as well. They will not be giving to your current kid. Just a thought. OP. My stepkid's dad isn't in their life. I'm actually trying to adopt them. But it's difficult because he's hard to find, and we need to serve him. Commenter 4. Do you have anything in place to ensure that if anything happens to you, your remaining share for sure goes to your son and not your wife? The default for assets is generally to go to the surviving spouse. OP. The deed is structured with rights of survivorship. Only my ex-wife and son could inherit my share of the house, because they are on the deed. No one not on the deed can inherit anyone's share. OP on his and his current wife's earnings. OP. I make around $120K. She makes around $80K. Commenter 5. You are basically asking her to sign a prenup in a way. And you have half a house, but not exactly a high roller situation. This is not as cut and dry as this thread makes it seem. You are essentially bringing in, let's say, $300K into a marriage. You are telling her that is for your son, not her. And it is your money, not your son's. That is fine. But I don't think it is strange for her to think that money could be used to grow your future family. Not only that, but you are tied up in a rental situation with your ex for the foreseeable future. OP, no, all incorrect. First of all, but least importantly, this house isn't worth $300K. It's a small 2-bedroom. Secondly, I didn't bring it into the marriage. My ex and I made a deal concerning this house before I ever met or married my wife. This house was always intended to eventually be for my son's benefit. It's not a marital asset. Not a penny of her money ever went into it, and not a penny of my money went into it after our marriage. So no, I didn't bring it into the marriage. OP responds to a longer comment on profit sharing and investments from the property. OP, I understand that you want to believe that. However, I go off of what attorneys say, specifically mine. It's very common for profit sharing not to be even. My ex-wife and I invested money in the property. It is completely legal for us to get some of it back. I understand that feels unfair, but that's the reality. It's completely allowable to make your child a co-owner of your property while not giving them a share of the profits immediately. OP on the divorce agreement regarding the house/property. OP, the divorce agreement made us 50/50ths co-owners of the house. We wanted to save the house to give to our son in the future, but didn't formalize that in the agreement just in case. If something horrible were to happen, we wanted the option of liquidation. Like if her medical situation worsened and she needed the cash. We wanted flexibility, but we always had an understanding. My wife was aware of this. Commenter 6. Have you considered the tax consequences besides the annual gift tax exclusion from gifting the house over several years? There are several things going on. Property being rented. Depreciation. Gifting over several years. Your son's basis is your original basis, so when he goes to sell many years from now, that will cause substantial gains. Depreciation recapture on sale. Maybe do something else. I hope you consulted a professional. OP. I consulted a professional. This is the method that saves everyone the most money. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.